it's amazing to see how women in their mid-30s with lots of children are getting faster and faster.
All right, we are here with Whitney Heins of the Mother Runners, and I found you, Whitney, through a friend of mine who said you need to follow this account, and I did, and then we connected and did some projects this year. But I want to thank you for coming on and just kind of chatting about your experience and what you hear from other moms and so on. So, can you tell us a little bit about what the Mother Runners is and kind of what made you start it?
Yeah, so the Mother Runners is, well, it's a website that has information and inspiration for moms who run, but it's also a community where you can connect with fellow moms on Facebook and Instagram. And we also offer coaching specifically for Mother Runners.
Awesome. And you have how many kids?
I have two. And so I had the idea to start the Mother Runners when I was training for my first marathon postpartum. My son was about a year, and I was starting to get more competitive with my running, and I was just I was encountering a lot of different issues like cluster feeding. He wasn't cluster feeding at the time, but just like how to navigate breastfeeding and running, and needy attached children and running, and sleep deprivation and running, and just all the challenges that are pretty unique to motherhood. And when I would do a Google search, I'd come up on a Runner's World article or something, and it was very clear that the people that had written it were either men or had not lived it. When I started, yeah, exactly. So when I started running with other moms, and we would talk about these issues and share our experiences and what worked for us. I really wanted a platform where we could just have everybody have access to that sort of information. So a lot of my articles, I speak to experts like you, but they also include the experiences of other moms who run. So it's kind of like being on a run with fellow moms and getting their experiences and their info on how they handled cluster feeding and running and all that sort of stuff. So I just really wanted to, because I ran by myself for so long that
Yes.
I felt like I was alone. Mom guilt's another one. I felt like I was alone with this, with mom guilt, and having to like pry my children off of me so that I could have 30 minutes by myself. And I realized that I wasn't alone. And I also wanted moms to know that they're not alone, and to not let those barriers keep them from doing what they need to do to be the best moms and runners and wives and workers that they can be.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're a pretty accomplished runner. Like you have some lofty goals. Do you want to kind of share those a little bit, things that you've worked towards?
Sure. Yeah. Yes, they are lofty. I've always run.
You're fast.
No, thanks. Well, I've been a runner. I started running with my dad when I was 6. And so I ran in high school, and I didn't run in college, but I ran by myself. My first marathon was the Marine Corps marathon, because I went to school in DC. I say that because you're in the area.
Yeah, that's what I too. Yeah.
But just in the past couple years, like I said, when my son was about 1, I decided to be more competitive. And when I ran that first marathon here in Knoxville, I placed 2nd, and the time was like good enough that my coach was like, okay, well, let's try for the trials. We have one last shot to try to get into the Olympic trials. So that's what we kind of shot for. We doubled my mileage. It was very intense. But unfortunately, I tore my hamstring in the buildup and continued to train on it. And it's just been a mess for like a year. So I still have a goal to qualify for the 2024 Olympic trials. But I'm starting from kind of square one again.
And that, honestly, I don't know that that's a bad thing. And you've had some good weeks recently that you've been sharing, which I think is super encouraging. But I think also more moms at the elite level are starting to talk about what they're having to work through. And it's a beautiful, sweet spot that I think women, especially in their 30s and 40s, are starting to find that joy in running again as they start to figure out how to work through these issues. So
yeah, and it's amazing to see how women in their mid-30s with lots of children are getting faster and faster and faster.
It's the sweet spot right now. Like, honestly, you as a distance runner, you'd probably rather be in your late 30s than in your 20s.
Yeah, no, really. It's so inspiring to see. I mean, Sarah Hall, who, she placed second in the London Marathon, with a nice PR on a really gross day. I mean, it's really amazing, and it's really inspiring to know that, like, we're not over the hill. I'm approaching 40, and it's like, no, I know I have many, and hopefully, we have many good years ahead of us of running. So it's not like we're perfect or something like that.
Exactly. All right. So you talk to a lot of moms via your page and via social media and that sort of thing. What are the biggest questions you see most? And we were just talking before this that you did a little poll and you kind of see a couple reoccurring themes come through. What are some of those themes that people shared with you?
Yeah, I would say there's about maybe 4 or 5 themes. The first one is pelvic floor health, which is why you and I connected initially, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And honestly, it's kind of amazing that it's taken this long for us to even talk about pelvic floor health. I mean, it wasn't really, when I had my children, I was ready to start running. I mean, my mind was ready, but I was but the doctors made me feel like my uterus was going to fall out if I started running at 6 weeks, but they didn't give me any guidelines whatsoever. And now it's at least good that people were thinking about it, but there's a lot of misinformation. And so a lot of moms have struggled with that, and they've had help by connecting with people like you, physical therapists, experts in the area. There's also Recore Fitness with Celeste, who works with a lot of the elites to make sure that they're strong and healthy in their core and their pelvic floor. Another issue is mom guilt, like we discussed. I mean, it's honestly, it was like one of the reasons why I founded the Mother Runners, is because I just felt so guilty having these goals and wanting to take the time to chase these goals when it meant that I would have to spend a couple hours away from my kids on a weekend. And a lot of women have finally seen that you can't be your best mom if you're not taking care of yourself and doing these things for yourself, and you're imparting all these wonderful lessons on your children. I mean, I've seen it in my kids, just having confidence and perseverance and hard work. They're watching you. So that helps deal with the guilt. And sleep deprivation is a huge one. And that's it's a season, and you just kind of have to ride it out. And if you feel terrible and if just the thought of running is tiresome to you, then you should probably take a nap if you have a window instead of go run. And figuring out the routine with breastfeeding and running. I'm amazed by how many mother runners out there have found a great routine where they wake up their babies for the dream feed and then they're able to go out in the morning. That was not my story. It was not that easy for me. And so I would just stay close to home and wait for the phone call that's like, come back. Or I would just
drive by.
My daughter she detested the bottle. We had like so many people come in and try to have her take it, and she would just starve herself and like one look at it and scream. So I would just either take her with me or stay close to home. So it just, and again, just knowing that it's not going to last forever and that you will have freedom one day.
I think that's such a good point. I mean, I was definitely, especially first time around, I projected everything forward and be like, oh my God, is this my life? Is this what I signed up for? And now, how old are your kids now?
They're 6 and 3.
6 and 3. Mine are just a little bit older. Mine are 7 and 9. I look back now at how fast that went, but I very distinctly remember, just walking down the street with a double stroller, or even just with my first, and I hadn't started running yet, looking at moms running by themselves and being just like so utterly like, how did you do that? Like, I can't leave my kid,
And now when I see moms, I think about like the story behind what it took for them to get out the door. Like
you know what it took.
babysitters or like, or
Yeah.
they have to pry children off of them too, so that they
The
could go.
negotiation. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, you don't think about that. You see these women running and you're like, oh, look at, like, they just look so happy. And that was probably just really easy for them to step out the door. And it's like, no, it is not.
No. And especially when they're little and you're like, okay, I need the diaper bag and I need the lovey and the backup lovey and the snack. And if I get them out of the stroller, they ain't going back in again. And then we're stuck 5 months down the road. Not that happened to me before, but
Oh no, yeah.
yeah, they're just glowing, wonderful halos over their heads. No.
Oh yes. As soon as my kids learned to walk, like, the stroller run days were pretty much over.
Yeah. No,
Like,
I definitely did more with my first. Yeah, my second, we never ran with the double. It was just like my oldest is too big, and I was just like, we're not doing that. And I'm going to be by myself, and you need dad time.
Exactly. Like, again, I've connected with so many amazing moms who do like 20-mile runs with their strollers, and it's amazing to me. But I'm like, I want to run by myself.
I do. Yeah, that's me.
Yes.
Now, you kind of alluded to this a little bit before, having to kind of work through this hamstring recovery, and you've been really open about kind of the ups and downs of it. I don't know if you had any injuries kind of in your running career before having kids, but what's the other layers that are part of that, having to try and work through injury? And then you're also a mom, and you can't always do the rehab the way that you would have done like back in your 20s or something like that. Like, what's different about it now?
Well, the rehab, I just do it when I have little chunks of time. So I'm like, here, play with this. And then I did it this morning, and my son's building with blocks, and we're talking about werewolves, and
Right.
I just look for the little windows. But I think I think the biggest difference was just maybe that I'm older and it took longer to heal. I did have a hamstring injury about 10 years ago, but it was in the belly hamstring. It wasn't in my high hamstring. So I think that's different. And then I foolishly was running like 100-mile weeks on it being torn, which wasn't the brightest thing to do.
Is this motherhood or is this wisdom as we get older?
Yes, exactly. But having an injury and being pregnant, and running and coming back after having a baby are very similar. I mean, they both require so much patience, and you're dealing with too, like,
that's a great parallel.
It's a shift in your identity as well. Like, when you can't run and you don't have that release, and then you're gaining weight, or you have weight that you feel like you need to lose. There's so many similarities. I would say postpartum running, though, it's hard because things just kind of feel weird.
Right.
But also you're dealing with just not having the time and not having enough sleep. But dealing with an injury, like you said, there are so many ups and downs. I feel like postpartum running, it's more of a straight path forward. Whereas with this injury, I've been rehabbing it for over a year. And it's like, I take several steps forward and then several steps back. I am moving forward, but it's just taking a lot longer than I had ever anticipated.
Yeah. Do you feel like, purely from like a running community perspective, do you feel like rehabbing after like a hamstring is something that's just way more easy to explain to somebody than like a mom trying to say, oh, well, I'm trying to rehab from diastasis or I leak or prolapse? Like, do you think the running community looks at them the same, or because plenty of people run and have leakage and talk about it, like, oh, my pants are all wet, halfway through the marathon? Like, what's your kind of take on that?
Oh, I would say, I feel like women are like, it's not, sorry, I have a spammer call.
You anyway.
I love how you have put out there, you had your leak week and you've kind of demystified it and put it out there so that it's not this faux pas, because I still feel like women don't feel comfortable talking about DR or leaking or anything, or loose ligaments or anything related to that. I feel like talking about a hamstring injury, you can talk about that with anybody and they're like, oh yeah. I know what that's about. So and again, like, even though I'm kind of shocked by how not straightforward this injury has been. There's been so many different opinions as to what to do because everybody's body is different and different things work for different people. But I mean, it's that way as well for postpartum issues, I think. But
I would agree.
Yeah, but it's that I don't know if that information is as readily available, which again, is why I wanted to link up with you because I mean, I was wrong on so many of my assumptions dealing with leakage and pelvic floor health. And you corrected me on a lot of things.
Well, I think the hard part with that too, I mean, I was having a discussion with a client earlier this week who is functioning very high level. There's just a couple things that we need to clean up. She went to somebody simultaneously after our first visit just because of insurance reasons, who gave her really, really basic stuff, said, stop jumping and stop running, but she runs leak free. I'm like, why would you do that? And basically gave her a program that, would have been done, like I would have given somebody 15 years ago when that's all we knew how to do. So I think the challenge in that, we've talked about this too, is like what level of care and who you talk to. Like, honestly, like moms who are legit runners, you need to be working with somebody who's very familiar with return to run and is not like a Kegel doesn't translate to running. It just doesn't. And so just like if you did a bunch of like mat exercises, that wouldn't be the only thing that you would do to rehab your hamstring back to running. Like you've got to do higher level things. So I guess my point there is it's confusing as if you don't know what's going on and don't know how to navigate the system, but in the system and you know what's going on, there's varying levels of that too. So we don't make it any easier for you guys.
No, I mean, I would say, for whatever you're dealing with, get with a professional who understands runners or is a runner themselves. Like that's well,
and also honestly can speak your language, because I know I've been through things before where they're like, oh, well, you should stop doing that. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm like, if you know how much a part of my identity this is, I need this so no one dies in my house. Like, so unless you're going to take care of my kids and my husband, mama needs to run. So like being able to negotiate and having those conversations, and same thing with my CrossFitters and my ladies who do HIIT and that kind of stuff. Like, don't take away things unless you absolutely do or die have to. Like, can you tweak things? Can you play with it so that you're still progressing, but you haven't just taken away everything that serves them in other ways? And lots of times it's in a mental health way too. So.
Oh yeah. And for whatever reason, I feel like that is always the first thing.
Oh, it's awful.
Even unrelated to like muscular or tendon or issues, like anything. I had a nurse a couple of weeks ago. I had some blood work done and they found some hormone issues and deficiencies. And they were like, yeah, well, this is probably because you run so much. Your body isn't meant to be running. I'm like,
it's crap.
Like,
I'm like, let me talk.
Good thing. It's not like
hormones and running together, which clearly you don't.
Right. Yes, exactly. So find a medical professional that's a runner.
There you go. Beautiful. Got it. All right. Last question here. So knowing everything you know from everybody that you've talked to, your experience, kind of all this collectively, new mom, what's your best advice for them going back to running, whether it's they've just had their baby or it's 6 months after and they haven't started back yet, or maybe they never started running after their first baby, they're after their second and they really want to get back to that. Like, what's the best advice to start back to that again?
I would say ask for help, because I see so many women have barriers because they don't, and me included, because they feel like they have to do it all, or running's not important enough. It's not a doctor's appointment. And so it just falls by the wayside. Meanwhile, their health and just their self-confidence are falling by the wayside as well. And so it's important that your kids know that other people can care for them and love them as well. And so prioritize your time, your health.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and just ask a neighbor, ask a loved. I mean, if you have family nearby, tap into them. And it took a while for my kids to get used to. I'm grateful enough to, or grateful enough. Like I said, I had a migraine, and I have a migraine. I'm not making sense. I'm really lucky that I have my mother-in-law and my mom nearby, but it took a while for the kids to be like,
yeah,
they're coming over and I'm leaving. When they were little, now they're like, see ya, mom. But it took a while. And so don't get discouraged if like the first couple times there's still lots of screaming. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think also too, I've talked to some other experts today, actually in breastfeeding and in sleep and sleep training. So we're kind of on the same wavelength there. That's honestly been the common theme, is get help, but also the power of virtual. And that's the beauty of what COVID, I think, has done is, I mean, there's so much you can help somebody with just by, hey, what is it that you're doing? Show me kind of some different things here. Just there's so much, at least from our perspective too. I can do 90% of my evaluation virtually. And chances are, which people don't think, they're like, oh, you need to see things. I'm like, the only thing I probably really need to see is prolapse. And if you don't mind putting a camera and situating over a laptop, I will not record it. I can pretty much tell you what's going on.
Wow.
Just honestly based on symptoms and patterns and things that we've seen. And people don't realize that. And especially, again, when it's harder to find help because of safety concerns and things like that. Honestly, there's so many more virtual options to be able to reach out to people, get help. Your kid might be in the other room, but there's still some things that you can do. But I think the moral of that story is to value yourself and you taking care of yourself via running, whatever that looks like, to do something about it. So that's an excellent, excellent point. So
100%. Yeah, because it's so easy for us to just keep putting other people in of our own needs.
That's like mom job 101. So awesome. Well, thank you so much. If you want to find Whitney, you can find her on Instagram at The Mother Runners, and then your website is
themotherrunners.com.
I love streamline branding. One of my favorite things in the world, because mom brain doesn't have room for anything other than that.
Oh, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you.